with the scent of potpourri, the films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly podcast that reviews one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also write into the show by emailing me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to content at any of our tier levels on a recurring monthly subscription basis, or you can buy individual collections a la carte in the Patreon shop section. This week on Patreon, FYC season is upon us. I'm a member of the Indiana Film Journalists Association, and as such, at the end of the year, I get screeners to watch for awards consideration, and I have begun early, so I am doing Patreon Potpourri episodes, which are full-length episodes where I review 4 movies that I watched during awards season. So the first edition of that just went up this week, today actually, where I reviewed Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story, Remembering Gene Wilder, music by John Williams, and The Remarkable Life of Evelyn. That went up on Patreon for the $2 and above patrons today. However, I'm doing something different this year. So for $5 and $10 members, they got video versions of each of those reviews earlier than the audio version that went to $2 and above patrons. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. You get all that and a bunch more content. And if you want to support the show without joining Patreon or spending money, I forgot that I added this part to the pre-roll intro. All I ask is that you listen to the minute or so of ads at the end of this episode and don't skip past them. So we recently got approved for ads across all the shows. So now every episode has 2 ads that play at the end of each episode. I have no idea how it works, but I assume if you play the episode to the end and listen to the ads, it counts toward any ad revenue we get. So I would appreciate it if you just let it roll for the last minute of the recording when you listen to it. So that's all the pre-roll I have. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd, at Obsessive Viewer. And later in the show, I'll be reviewing the new romantic drama We Live in Time, currently in theaters. But before that, we'll go over some movie news, and then we'll review Robert Zemeckis' new film here in this week's feature review. And joining me tonight for that is my friend and IFJ colleague and his cat, Sam Watermeier, whose work can be found on MidwestFilmJournal.com, and he can be followed on Letterboxd at the handle of Sam Movie Man. Welcome back to the show, Sam. How's it going? And hello, Kitty. Yeah,
this is Parabola. He's been all over me today.
Oh,
I think maybe he senses my stress or something.
Yeah.
But he wanted to join. Hopefully he won't be a bother.
Nice. Well, we are a cat-friendly podcast as long as it doesn't fuck up the audio. I kid. I'd be accepting of that. It's fine.
No, he'll be a good boy.
Nice. So welcome back to the show, Sam. How you been? How's it going? Like you alluded to, this is election night and we are distracting ourselves by recording a podcast about movies.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here right now instead of doom scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for having me.
Of course.
Hey, congratulations on the ad deal too, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very cool. You're in the big time.
Sort of.
I mean, it's a very cool thing.
It is.
It's a nice feather to put in your cap. So
yeah, exactly. It's nice to have like a potential source of passive like income from this. It's not like inside baseball. It's not going to amount to much. Like I've had the ads running on Anthology, which is far and away the most popular of the podcasts that I do, but it's also a dormant podcast because I haven't had an episode out since April. And the way it works, I'm not going to get into the details or whatever, but basically the amount of listens translate to an algorithm that basically it's whatever. And you kind of get just like a little bit of money in an account. And once it hits a threshold of like X amount of money, it releases those funds to your PayPal. So that's kind of how it works. It's nice. I did a kind of set it and forget it thing for Anthology, and it took 6 months to reach that threshold and pay out like a little bit of money. So with that being the most popular of my podcasts, but also a dormant podcast, like I can imagine that it can be like a year or so before I have like the little bit of money that comes out of Obsessive Viewer for the ads. But
well, it's cool nonetheless.
Yeah. And to kind of give a little bit more thought into it, basically, like I intentionally made it like I could, like the way that it's set up, and I'm sorry that this is too inside baseball and everything, but like the way it's set up is like you can have ads run like pre-roll ads, mid-roll ads, and post ads. So like I could have set it up to where like I would have 2 ads play at the beginning of the podcast before anything happens, and then have to like have it set up to where like right now it would go to two more ads in the middle of the show, and then come back to this, and then 2 ads at the end, or even 3 ads across that. So I decided not to be greedy, and I'm just doing unintrusive ads at the end of the episodes so that, you know, I'm not interrupting or delaying the listeners' experience. So yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you.
I like that. It's a very generous strategy.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens when I get a taste for the money and everything that pours in from it, because then every 3 seconds will be an ad. Which I guarantee that's not going to be the case, because no, I hate that in podcasts myself. So, but thank you. And thank you also, Sam, for being on the show so much this year. This is, I believe, your 12th appearance this year on Obsessive Viewer.
It's been a blast being on. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Especially, you know, just considering how silly I've been on every episode. I'm surprised you keep having me back.
Oh no, it's a blast, man. I am very, very pleased to have you on, and to have like people that are willing to come on so frequently is just it means the world to me, more than any like incremental ad revenue that I get could possibly mean. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you've also had a hell of a year in terms of writing and everything on on Midwest Film Journal. Like your most recent review is for Here, which I did read the review. So good job. I think it'll be a fun conversation because our opinions line up pretty closely. But I mean, you've written a ton of stuff this year. Like you shared your like document, just like showing like how much you've written. It's staggering. Like just very, very impressive. Like good job, man.
Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot. Coming from a fellow critic I admire.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I've been trying to stay busy. The nice thing about Midwest Film Journal is we're kind of given free rein to really only write what we want to write about. It's not like everyone is assigned, they're strictly assigned reviews to write. We kind of get to pick and choose, and I've had fun writing on there. We had a new series this year focused on Guillermo del Toro movies, as always, we do the annual No Sleep October series. I wasn't a part of that this year, unfortunately, but it was still, a great run of essays, and that series is always a lot of fun. So yeah, things are going well.
Nice. Yeah, I was unfortunately not able to participate in the No Sleep October essay series because of personal reasons, and was not able to do it. But I'm going to be contributing something in December, I think. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I admire everything that everyone does over at Midwest Film Journal. It's great. Yeah. And speaking of people having kind of free reign to do things, in the new segment that I've been doing the last few episodes, playing this week in Indy. Let's talk about what's coming to theaters this weekend in Indianapolis. First up, I want to talk about the Alamo Drafthouse in Indy. I've talked about it the last couple of episodes. It opens Monday, November 18th, 2024, and they just announced tickets for its first lineup of movies are on sale now. So you can get tickets for Anora, Red One, The Substance, the 4K restoration of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Howl's Moving Castle. Those are all playing on November 18th at Alamo Drafthouse. Sam, are you excited about Alamo?
I am. I'm very excited to hear that Texas Chainsaw Massacre will be there. I thought I had missed it for Halloween, but that's really cool that it'll be at the Alamo. I'm also just generally looking forward to that theater opening. I've never been to an Alamo Drafthouse. I've heard that it's an interesting experience. They do a lot of kind of repertory screenings like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And they tend to show, kind of cooler, artsier stuff like Red One.
Right, of course.
That one really sticks out like a sore thumb on that list. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I might try to catch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I looked it up. Here's the other thing. Here's the thing. AMC A-List has spoiled me so much. Because I looked in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's $15. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not too bad, I guess. But also AMC A-List has spoiled me. So I'm going to try to maybe see it, but I am going to the kind of soft launch, press opening thing that they're having. I don't know if I should say that out loud, but are you going to go to that?
Maybe. I don't want to complain about it.
No,
it's a very nice. It's a very nice opportunity. I don't know if it'll. We all have day jobs.
Scheduling may not allow it.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. I got confirmation yesterday that I'd be able to flex my hours, so I'm excited. And I'll probably post something on Patreon about it. So and then I'll talk about it. So the timing of it is a little I'm not going to talk about it in next week's podcast, but the week after I'll talk about it. But I'm excited. I'm excited to go to it. It'll be interesting because I haven't seen the building. I haven't seen what they've done with it aside from what's on social media. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I want to backtrack just for real quick. So I really shouldn't complain at all about scheduling because it's really all on me. This is just kind of a personal anecdote. I get very guilty about taking any time off of work.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I really shouldn't because my job is thankfully very generous with PTO.
Nice.
But I just have this really intense, almost Catholic guilt about taking time off work. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to make that a New Year's resolution.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. I can absolutely understand that. And as someone who has a lot of guilt about a lot of things in my life, it's something that I get that too. It's more for me, I think, especially since I just started a new job relatively recently, it's just more of a, I don't want to draw attention to myself in any way.
Right.
And that might also be PTSD from my previous job where that's the thing. Yeah. Oh my God, this could have been on Patreon. But basically I had my touch point with my boss on Monday and I was freaking out over it a little bit. And I was prepared to defend myself. And the reason I was prepared to defend myself was because I had bereavement time. And because of that, I didn't have I felt when I came back, I didn't have I wasn't on top of my game. So I was prepared to be hey, I know that I know the numbers don't look good here. I know that, but just everything. And I'm finally getting back to it. But no, the meeting went fine because I'm not in as far as I can see, I'm not in a very toxic place like I was in the previous job. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad things have improved.
Thank you.
I'm glad sometimes the grass is greener on the other side.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But speaking of greener grass, speaking of green grass, the Can to get us back into this, the Can for what's playing in Indy. Can Theater, November 8th through the 14th, the Indianapolis LGBT Film Festival is playing there, and opening on November 8th this weekend is Memoir of a Snail. And as part of their Noir-vember series, November 10th and 14th, they're playing Double Indemnity. That's going to be, I believe, every Sunday in November is going to be a noir film that is going to have introductions by Julia Ricci from previously from Heartland.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a Richie?
I think it's Ricci.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. I've met her like once.
Sounds like a fun series.
Yeah. And I might go to Double Indemnity specifically. Later in the month, they're going to be playing Laura and I can't remember what one of the other ones were, but Double Indemnity is a movie that, I saw like in high school. It's one of those movies that like I saw in high school because I felt like, oh, I need to watch all of these movies that like I'm supposed to watch. So like I don't have much memory of Double Indemnity. So I'm excited to have an excuse to see it. So I might check it out at the Can on November 10th. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
And moving right along, Living Room Theaters, and I promise we're almost done. Living Room Theaters opening this week, Nora and Heretic, and they also have a promo deal that I'll just read from the website. Explore these films with our pocket-friendly promotion and earn free tickets by watching indie films. For every 2 tickets to the following independent movies, you will receive 1 free ticket to use on any movie of your choice within the next 90 days. And so the movies that count toward that promotion are Let's Start a Cult, We Live in Time, Terrifier 3, The Substance, Anora, and Heretic. So that's pretty neat that Living Room does that. Yeah. Have you seen any movies
that's
at the
very
Living Room?
neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Oddly enough, the first movie I saw there was Spider-Man No Way Home.
Oh, nice.
Not really like the kind of movie that theater is known for,
right?
But, you know, I had a great time. I saw a Heartland film there, and I'm stoked for Heretic.
Oh, me too. Me too.
That looks so good.
It does.
Yeah, I've been eagerly awaiting that one. So
me too.
It's cool that it's playing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in my backyard at Keystone Art, playing this weekend is Steve McQueen's Blitz and Amelia Perez. And rounding out this section, at the Flix Brewhouse in Carmel on November 9th, they're having a Flix Junior screening of The Iron Giant. And on November 10th, they're having a brunch screening of Miss Congeniality. Yeah. And also down south in Franklin at the Historic Artcraft Theater on November 8th and 9th, they're playing No Time for Sergeants, starring Andy Griffith. A country bumpkin enlists in the Air Force, raising hijinks with his fellow recruits and driving his drill sergeant to insanity. It's a 1958 comedy. That's November 8th and 9th at the Historic Artcraft Theater. And that is it for what's playing in Indianapolis this week. Yeah, Sam, any thoughts on those?
If listeners haven't been, I would strongly recommend the Artcraft in Franklin.
Same.
They made like one of my dream screenings possible. They showed The Crow.
Nice.
And it was Blu-ray. It wasn't the 35 millimeter, but it was still just so cool. And like they played the soundtrack over the intercom, and just hearing like 90s grunge playing before The Crow made me feel like I was traveling back in time. I was like geeking out so hard.
God, that's
like
awesome.
Obviously I'm a big 90s nerd,
Mhm.
and that's like one of the most 90s movies of all time.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, you can tell right away that it's from the 90s. And I think last weekend they had Escape from New York there.
Yeah.
Just, they're always doing cool stuff there. So
Oh, yeah.
I can't speak highly enough about it.
Same here, and I'll spare the listeners my standard story about getting to see Seven Samurai on 35 millimeter there, but I will say that they did they have really cool like marathon screenings. So like I was there for the Sci-Fright Frenzy screening of like sci-fi horror films and sci-fi films. So like over the span of 2 days, I saw like the original Godzilla.
Oh wow.
Not the day the Earth stood still, but well, I don't know. I don't remember what it was, but the original Godzilla stands out. But there was a bunch of other movies. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original.
Cool.
Yeah, War of the Worlds, also the 50s one. Just like it's the programming they have there is impeccable. It's amazing. So check it out.
Was that just a 1 day thing?
It was over the course of 2 days. I feel like I went to one day of it. Yeah, but like they had like tickets that you could buy in bulk or individual tickets. One of my big regrets was I think in like 2018 or 19, they did like, I think like yearly they do like big marathon, like all day movie screenings there like once a year. And one of the years, and I'm so pissed that I didn't do this, was that they did a I think maybe multiple day screening of Stephen King adaptations. And
oh man.
Yeah. And like an idiot, I did not go to that. Which is such a shame. Such a shame. So yeah.
Oh, we drove past the Tibbs Drive-In recently.
Oh, nice.
And I saw that Christine was playing there.
Oh, wow.
I just thought like, oh man, how magical would that be to see that movie at a drive-in?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I mean, obviously it's about a killer car. I think there is a sequence set at a drive-in.
That sounds right.
So just, yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting. I'll have to add Tibbs to the list of theaters to roll out in the way too long opening segments of this podcast going forward. But we're here tonight to review Here, and I'm going to review We Live in Time later. But before we get to the featured review, I do have a couple of news items to talk about in the news before the reviews segment. Sam, do you mind indulging me in these two news items that I have?
No, go for it.
Okay. So the first one I have is that I don't have many details because not a lot of details have come out about it, but it's been reported that Matt Damon and Tom Holland are going to be in Christopher Nolan's new movie, which I believe is going to be coming out. I don't think it's coming out next year. I think it's going to be out in 2026, or maybe not, but yeah, so I don't know. How do you feel about this casting news? And are you interested in what Christopher Nolan is going to be doing next? By the way, it is coming out July 17th, 2026.
Yeah, I always look forward to Christopher Nolan movies. I've heard that this one is about helicopter cops.
Yeah.
At least that's the rumor. I don't know if there's any truth to that.
Right.
I think if it is true, it should be called Chopper Coppers.
I like
it. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be stunning visually and obviously an IMAX movie. Yeah, so I don't know. If that is the case, that's kind of interesting territory for Christopher Nolan. especially after Oppenheimer. It's just
Mhm.
completely different. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too. And I was very charmed by Tom Holland's kind of like reaction to the news. Like I think he said a statement or something that said like the phone call he got about this job was like a defining moment of his life or something. And I was like, that's sweet. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the final piece of news that I have is that a new Godzilla movie from the director of last year's Oscar-winning Japanese film Godzilla -1, which was my movie of the year in 2023, has been officially greenlit. And I am ecstatic. I'm very excited. I loved Godzilla -1, and I'm eager to see what they do next. I don't know if it's going to be a continuation of the same timeline or a different movie altogether, but did you catch Godzilla -1? And how do you feel about this news, Sam?
I'm kind of far behind on the Godzilla movies, honestly. Both the Japanese and American movies. I have nothing against Godzilla. I think it's it's a cool franchise and a great character. I just I need to catch up. So maybe
Nice.
I will in time for this new one.
Nice. I highly recommend checking out Godzilla -1. It is currently as of the release date of this podcast, I'm not sure if it will be still in theaters, but it was brought back in theaters this week for Godzilla's 70th anniversary. So I actually ended up catching it. Like for months now. I haven't gotten around to watching the black and white version, the Godzilla -1 color version. And so I was excited that was a version of it was playing in theaters. So I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see it this way. So I got to see it in the theater, and it's gorgeous. It holds up really well. It's an amazing movie. Very like emotionally heavy storytelling about post post-war Japan. And just like, that's the point of the movie, is like Godzilla -1 is like, the -1 is that Japan was at 0, and then Godzilla brought it to -1 with destruction and everything. So, really incredible movie, and it stands up. It holds up. Yeah,
very cool. I'm more eager to check it out.
Nice.
Upon your recommendation.
Nice. Well, let me know when you do. And yeah. And also, speaking of letting me know something, should we let each other know our feelings?
Your transitions are amazing.
They are terrible tonight. But thank you nonetheless. So let's get into our featured review of the evening. We're going to be talking about here this movie. Of course, we're going to do a non-spoiler and then spoiler review. So to switch it up, or to switch over to spoilers, I'll play a clip from the trailer later in the show. Of course, to navigate around spoilers, you can also check the show notes of the episode in your podcast app or at obsessiveviewer.com/OV449. So this movie here was currently in theaters. It was released in theaters on November 1st, 2024. And the premise, according to IMDb, is a generational story about families and the special place they inhabit, sharing in love, loss, laughter, and life. Director for this movie was Robert Zemeckis, and writers were Eric Roth and Robert Zemeckis. It's also based on the graphic novel by Richard Maguire. And the movie stars Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Paul Bettany, and Kelly Riley. So, Sam, I think before we get into the non-spoiler review of this, can we touch on really quick your thoughts on Forrest Gump, as this is a reunion of the creative team behind Forrest Gump, some 30 years after the fact. How did you feel about Forrest Gump? And then from there we can go into our review of here.
Forrest Gump was a childhood favorite of mine, as I'm sure it was for a lot of people. I remember as a kid, I loved it because just so much happened in it. It was like it kind of blew my mind. It's like he goes from being a soldier to a football player to a ping pong player to a shrimp boat captain. Like, it's just, I felt like it was kind of the first epic I had ever seen as a kid. and I watched it again for the series I did on Midwest Film Journal called Hanks for Everything, Tom.
Nice.
And a friend of ours of the site, Dave Gutierrez, is well known for just absolutely hating Tom Hanks. So he did a dueling essay series called Hanks for Nothing, Tom. And then we came together to watch Forrest Gump. And I'll admit that it was a little strange watching it again. It hasn't aged very well in a lot of ways. It's a little bit offensive, but I think you have to remember, so people kind of dog on it for having this very simplistic view of American history, and kind of glossing over the atrocities of American history a little bit. And I think what I try to remember about it is that it reflects the simplistic mind view of Forrest Gump. It's obviously from his eyes, and I think it's almost kind of a satire of how people view American history as, with this kind of childlike sense of innocence. Because the movie touches on racism and war and doesn't really reveal like the harsh realities of those things, because it's viewing them through kind of a childlike lens. And I think the problem with here, and I won't get into it too much, but it seems like Robert Zemeckis is still viewing American history through that sort of lens, kind of simplistically, and this might be hyperbolic, but almost in kind of a Make America Great Again way, in the sense that he kind of views this past history as like the good old days, like the glory days of America. And I'm not so sure that post World War II was really the happiest of days.
Right.
But this movie kind of romanticizes it. And I think that, I think the way Forrest Gump romanticizes and simplifies history is fitting, because it's a reflection of the Forrest Gump character. And I don't think it works as well in this movie here. So those are my thoughts on Forrest Gump. I don't know if any of that made a lick of sense.
It made sense. And I really like that idea of like it being a reflection of like his innocence and viewing of American history, and his experience in American history as being tailored by that simplistic view, or that innocence view that he has. And like, here is not like, there's no Forrest Gump character in here. And I think that that's the biggest failing of it, because the movie is trying to imagine this kind of nostalgic viewpoint of American history, while just kind of not having an anchor to which gives an excuse to, sugarcoat it in a sense. But yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And like, as far as Forrest Gump is concerned, that was a movie that I watched all the time as a kid. I haven't watched it lately, so I'm curious to see how it holds up. Especially because I think that my kind of viewpoint of it, or my opinion of it, would be kind of, I think my current opinion of it would probably land under it being like, oh, this is like sappy awards bait stuff. And I think maybe it'd be more of a jaded movie experience for me than it was like Innocence of a Child, Matt, viewing it in the 90s. So yeah. So stay tuned. Maybe I'll revisit it and talk about it at some point. But yeah. But
it's one of those movies that, like, I can see how it's aged poorly and it's a little cringy, but I also can't help but like get kind of choked up when I'm watching it.
Sure.
Just because I think, you know, it does work really well as a very sentimental drama. I think, you know, Tom Hanks is really charming in it, playing kind of a problematic performance.
Mm-hmm.
Which some people might think is an understatement, but I think it's well intentioned. It's hard not to kind of still have affection for that movie for me.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. I'm wondering how my own nostalgia will factor into it, but that's Forrest Gump. Now we're here for Here. So we both saw this at a screening, and I've got to admit, right from the jump, I was intrigued by it. I think I've said for months now at this point that if it was anyone else other than Robert Zemeckis trying this very kind of high concept movie where the premise doesn't really explain it all that well, but basically the gimmick of the movie is that it is a stationary camera capturing thousands of years of time in the kind of living room of this house. And throughout time, it jumps back and forth in time. We see freaking dinosaurs. We see colonial people. We see indigenous people. We see various families that live in this house over the decades. And the concept behind it is a good one. Like, this concept, I think, is very strong, but this is not the movie to tell. Like, this is not the story to tell with this concept. And like, it's not the way to tell it. Like, this, if you don't mind me going into my thoughts on it really quick, but,
Go for it.
Yeah. So I thought this was just kind of garbage, honestly. Like, for months I've been saying that I feel like if like a Richard Linklater was going to do something like this, I would be more interested, because he has a track record of doing these interesting, like, high concept shooting visions of movies. I'm thinking in particular Boyhood, and like I still haven't seen the trilogy, but the Before trilogy, like things with time are interesting. I think he would have had a better hand at it, but Robert Zemeckis, his approach to it just seems like that kind of very, that very nostalgic, like idealized vision or version of the country. And it seems like it doesn't play as this like beautiful sentiment of Americana that I think is the intention. Instead, it plays out as like, oh, this guy just like, it's like this ideal, like it's an idealized version of Americana that doesn't really reflect reality. And I want to touch on something later in this review that you talked about in your review that I feel like was also a misstep, but you were high on. So I'm excited to get to that. But in broad thoughts, what did you think of Here?
Well, it's funny because, you know, you just mentioned how it goes all the way back to like prehistoric times with dinosaurs, and I'm about to say that it's not ambitious enough. It hops around in time quite a bit, but it very quickly becomes this pretty traditional narrative focusing on one family. And to me, all of the other subplots just kind of felt like afterthoughts. Mm-hmm. Like you see a slice of time focusing on Benjamin Franklin. You see a slice of time focusing on the inventor of the Lazy Boy.
Yeah.
And that would be interesting if they actually tied into the central storyline of Tom Hanks and Robin Wright's family, but they really don't. They just kind of feel random. And I've read a little bit about the graphic novel, and it seems like that speaks to more universal, kind of timeless human behavior. Like, it doesn't follow specific characters. It'll show like someone going into a room and forgetting why they went in there, and then it'll hop back in time to like a Native American roaming around the woods and like getting lost. So kind of like connecting those two things. But it seems like whenever this movie hops back in time or forward, it's never like there's never a connection made.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to agree completely with you. Like that was a frustrating thing about me. I liked the visual technique that it did, like kind of having these still, not even necessarily still portraits, but like little like frames that look like photographs, but that's what brings us into each time frame. I appreciated that, but yeah, there was no like connective tissue running through all of it. Like you said, it didn't work for me on that level.
And in terms of the family narrative that it does focus on, they're just such like tired archetypes. Like there's the World War II veteran father played by Paul Bettany, who is just basically a loud drunk who's always kind of bickering with his wife. And there's his wife who is this kind of mousy, quiet housewife. And then there's Tom Hanks, their kind of rebellious son who wants to be an artist. And I just feel like we've seen those sort of characters over and over again. And like you said, if this were in someone else's hands, like, I wonder what kind of characters Richard Linklater would come up with, or, like Paul Thomas Anderson. That would be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But they just pick the most like bland kind of milquetoast people to follow. And it just, the dialogue is really like creaky and dated. Like, at one point, Paul Bettany says something to his wife like, "Gee Willikers, this economy is so rough." And And I said in my review that like the concept of a stationary camera seems interesting in theory, but then with scenes like that, you very quickly realize like, oh, this is just a bad community theater production.
Yes. And yes, like right from the outset, when we get to the actual family story in the house, like it took me a minute to really switch my brain off from like it being like a community theater production and it being a feature film. Like eventually it did click with me. Like that feeling got out of my brain. Like nothing wrong with community theater, nothing wrong with theater in general, but it's like it just really didn't. It took a while to really be something that wasn't distracting on the screen. And maybe it was when it started switching off to different eras in the house, but like up until then it was like, oh, this looks bad. And I'm not even talking about the visual effects or anything. It just looks bad.
Yeah, and like I'll kind of soften my words about community theater by saying like that's fine for what it is, but like it's weird to take such a visual medium and like Robert Zemeckis. It's when you realize that Robert Zemeckis's big stunt is to not move the camera. It's like, well, what are we doing then?
Yeah.
Like we're going back to this kind of antiquated form of storytelling. Like this is basically just filmed theater at this point. And it's strange it's kind of an interesting concept in the sense that everything is shown from this one spot in time.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these scenes play out in a living room. And it never leaves that spot. And it's kind of interesting to see like dramatic moments play out organically in that space. Because you would think that like some things wouldn't feel natural in a living room, but they actually do work for the most part. Like it makes sense why they're there. Like it doesn't feel, the setting doesn't feel forced, if that makes sense.
Right.
I thought it was surprisingly effective in that way. And it actually kind of works to the advantage of the visual effects. I actually think this is the most natural looking example of de-aging that I've seen. And maybe it is because you see people from kind of a distance.
Oh, I agree completely. That was the big kind of surprise for me with this movie, was that I went in kind of just, I didn't go in with the thought that it was going to look bad. I went in with the thought that, like, yeah, it's probably not going to look great. Like, I went in anticipating it to look bad, but I didn't really have a problem with the de-aging effects. We talked about it, and I think, I want to say it was, you referenced it in your review, but like hearing Tom Hanks's voice out of a teenager was kind of off-putting and weird. But it's weird that was the most like uncanny valley in terms of the people on screen that I got. Like the hummingbird thing was like very distractingly bad, and the dinosaurs and stuff. So yeah, but yeah, the de-aging effects were surprisingly pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, I'm curious, like drifting away from his main storyline, what did you think about the other stuff, like Benjamin Franklin and the lazy boy guy? And
here, that's my biggest gripe with the movie. And I apologize, there's a car alarm going off outside. But the biggest issue that I had with this movie was that it had the potential to be this very deep and interesting generational story about people in America. And like, so on one hand, I think that it was a very big misstep to do anything with dinosaurs. Even like the indigenous people, like that doesn't have like any big payoff at all. And the Benjamin Franklin thing, like that leads to like all that leads to is a funny joke that's not funny. And like, here's where I kind of need to divorce myself from my expectations of this movie and what this movie is, because my expectations are that this concept, this idea, is something that could be powerfully utilized to tell an interesting, subtle story about the different people's experiences in the United States of America. And it touches on that a little tiny bit with one scene that you referenced in your review involving a black family telling their son how to handle a traffic stop from a police officer. And that, I think that scene, as well-intentioned as it is also kind of victim of being like a tired thing that this movie could have gone. This could have been a completely different movie that examined what different families experience in the country throughout the years. Like that could have been like, this could have been a very interesting movie, but instead we've got dinosaurs, we've got indigenous people, we've got Benjamin Franklin, and then we get like COVID era family, and we've got a lazy boy and a pilot. And it's all very like I understand that this, like what I understand is I'm probably being harsh on it because it's a movie that isn't the movie that I think it could have been. It had potential to be. what the movie is a movie that is made not for me. Like, we saw this at an AARP screening. Like, this is for like older audiences who want that nostalgia, who want that kind of like wonderful idealized version of American history without, you know, while we're in this very hyperbole driven and very dangerous time politically. Like, they want to kind of have this nostalgia thing. They want their member berries, to borrow South Park's phrasing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just feels very, like, I don't want to necessarily say insincere, but it just feels very bland to me. It doesn't feel like it has the emotional impact as it should. And like you said, a lot of the dialogue like is very hokey. Like, it is like television's version of the 50s, when people that lived in the 50s were like, okay, it seems like 80s era television idealizing the 50s, because the people who were writing the television in the 80s came of age in the 50s and wanted to be nostalgic for the 50s. So they made this like idealized version of the 50s. And I think that that's like what Robert Zemeckis is running with, is this idealized version of the 50s without much interest in actually examining any of the like deeper things going on in the country. And instead just kind of having this kind of just weird nostalgia fest for boomers to really latch onto, which, I mean, if they like it, they like it. That's great. But I feel like it was such a missed opportunity to really examine some interesting aspects of life in America. So
I think you just nailed it.
Thank you.
And I want to go back to the scene you mentioned, which I called out in my review. I think that's a good example of the movie not having a strong connective tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So that scene with the black father kind of talking his son through the nightmarish scenario of being pulled over by a white police officer, if that scene was juxtaposed with a scene of Tom Hanks maybe telling his son or giving his son a driving lesson, that would be interesting, because it would show that this driving lesson in this white middle-class family is kind of inconsequential, whereas for this black family, it's a matter of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it showed that kind of stark contrast, it would have been a lot stronger. But I think Robert Zemeckis, his big flaw is not leaning into those harsh realities. He kind of throws in the scene with the black father. It almost feels like he's kind of like just throwing the audience a bone of like, oh, well, here's a contemporary moment that reflects current American life, but he doesn't really connect it back to the story or the storyline from the past.
Absolutely. It feels more like it's something out of obligation, and it feels very kind of disingenuous to what he does throughout the rest of the movie. It just seems like it sticks out. And like I said, as well-intentioned as it probably was, I appreciate that was in there, but like, my thought is that like, that seems like the bare minimum of what he could have done to address racial inequality and, you know, like the different issues of today. Instead of just having that, it just seems like, okay, we've checked that off the list. Let's bring more dinosaurs, and let's bring back that freaking hummingbird as the crowd favorite. It just seems very misguided. And like, again, it is indicative of like, it could have been a much stronger movie if the movie just handled like Tom Hanks's family's life in the house and the black family's life in the house, which I don't even know their names. Like, I don't even know their names. And then not like, instead of having like the deep history stuff or even like the pilot or the Lazy Boy thing, like have it be about different eras of life in America and how different people experience that life in America, and like actually have something to say rather than being like, oh, remember this is all like, oh shucks, this was great. It just seems very just hapless and directionless for me, and it just really bothered me, and it bothered me even more now that we're talking about it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to show how little Zemeckis has changed since Forrest Gump, because that movie too feels like a director basically saying, hey, remember this?
Yeah.
So,
which again, that like, in that, my memory of Forrest Gump at least works because of, like you said, because of that innocence, that prism of innocence that we have through Forrest's perspective. Like when one of the scenes that I remember is when I think they were integrating schools in that scene, and he mistakes the racial slur with like them talking about like getting raccoons out of the school. Like that has like this softening, not even softening, but like it just has this perspective that is so unique to the Forrest Gump character that it just seems like it doesn't come from a place of, I don't know, it's like depicting hate and racism through the prism of someone who maybe isn't fully capable of having that like capacity or having like intentional like racism within them. And it's just, that's an interesting example. And like here, it's just like, it just seems very hollow. And like in terms of the actual scene with the father telling the son like how to handle a traffic stop, like I like on paper and in isolation, that scene is really good, but also like it just reminded me I've seen that subject in that type of storytelling done better. Like I'll evoke the 2019 Twilight Zone series that again people missed the fucking point of. Like there was an episode, one of my favorite episodes of that entire run was called Replay. It was like the second or third episode of the first season. It is about a mother and son who are traveling to a college so the son can go to college. They get stopped by a police officer. They are a black family. He is a white officer. And throughout, like the son gets shot and dies in the traffic stop. And the mother realizes that the camcorder that she has, when she rewinds it, she can rewind time. And the entire point of that episode is about the ingrained racism, the way that it's a very bleak depiction of it, because every iteration that she does while rewinding it and going back, every change that she makes results in his death. Like it results in that happening. And it is a fascinating, just like examination of this big problem in American society. And it's done with such just beauty and wonder, and cleverness. And it was met with people just fucking missing the point, saying like, well, why didn't they do this? Why? Like, you're missing the point of the episode. You're missing the point, the theme of it. But then again, you also had fucking morons saying that the Twilight Zone was political. Like, it was always political, you freaking idiots. So anyway.
Yeah, and another example of how this movie kind of shies away from harsh realities is one of the characters goes to Vietnam, yet nothing seems to happen with that. Meanwhile, another character dies of COVID.
Yeah.
So that just felt kind of odd. Like, that's a strange choice. Like,
yeah.
you have the, I mean, I don't mean to downplay the seriousness of COVID or anything.
Right.
But it's just strange that Vietnam was kind of glossed over.
Yep.
And then you have someone kind of shockingly dying from COVID. It just like misses the mark in terms of making a statement about anything.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to dive into spoilers? Because there are a couple of things I want to talk about, and I don't really want to spoil it in non-spoilers. Because there are a couple of things that work okay. Like there's something with the family that I think works reasonably well, but isn't hit hard enough. So I don't know. We can talk about that in spoilers if you want.
Yeah, because I feel myself starting to kind of talk in spoilers already, so
yeah,
that'd be great.
Nice, and then we can finally talk about that damn hummingbird. So before we go into spoilers, Sam, what did you rate this on Letterboxd, and where can people find you on Letterboxd as well?
You can find me at Sam Movie Man, and I'm usually pretty generous with ratings, but I gave this 1.5 stars. Out of 5. I considered going for 2, but then the more I thought about it, like the angrier I got about it.
Sure.
So yeah, this one's it's quite bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're in the same boat. I ended up rating it 2 stars. After this conversation, it could go down to 1.5, but we'll see what happens in spoilers. But I did think like. I don't know. Like it wasn't good. It wasn't good. The missed opportunities is what sank it. And it just being kind of this fluffy, just like saccharine. Is that the word? Saccharine? Kind of just like vision of America. It just seemed like very tired and misguided. So I rated 2 stars. And let's go into spoilers for here. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. If you want to avoid spoilers, check the show notes for timestamps. But once we come back from this clip, we're going to be spoiling Robert Zemeckis' here. So stay tuned.
Hey, Dad. I'd like you to meet Margaret.
Nice to meet you, Margaret.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Young.
Time sure does fly, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Take a straight and stronger course to the corner of your life. Make the White Queen run.
Okay, so spoilers on for here. First up, I want to touch on the dinosaurs, the indigenous people, and the Benjamin Franklin of it all. None of them go anywhere. Like the dinosaurs thing, it's very quick. It's like, it's fine. It's whatever. It's to demonstrate that this piece of land existed and has existed and everything. But like, I feel like the whole point of the indigenous people thing was like, they found the necklace, like the architecture students or whatever found the necklace. And like, I will say in that scene, so that's like in the 60s and it's like college students that come in. I don't know if this was the intention. I doubt it, given the tone of the rest of the movie. But for a brief second, I thought, oh my God, are these like Manson family people that are going to come and kill them or something?
That's amazing. That would have been more entertaining than what happens.
Oh, absolutely. And I told you, like, when we were leaving the theater that I would love to see this applied to like a horror movie. And you talked about Presence, the new Steven Soderbergh movie. But I think that this like concept of it being like a stationary camera would be really interesting as a haunted house movie. But yeah, like the necklace, like that doesn't amount to anything. And then the Benjamin Franklin thing, like, I don't know if it ties to anything that happens in the family storyline, except for Tom Hanks saying, like, quoting Benjamin Franklin as the scene cuts to people saying like, oh, no one's going to remember my brother or anything that he says. Like the most hacky, just like, okay, just like, fine, whatever.
It's like a Forrest Gump joke, basically.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we don't have that anchor of the innocence of Forrest Gump. So it just plays up as just super like faux sentimentality. And it doesn't land for me. It just kind of seems really lame. And boring really is the biggest offense that it does. So yeah.
Yeah. I thought the Native American stuff would have more of an impact. I thought maybe they would find the land and offer the family money to excavate or something.
Yeah.
Or, like I thought that you're right. It doesn't really amount to anything.
No.
And yeah, so I'm sorry. Go ahead with.
Oh no, that's fine. I'm just gonna kind of go all over the place here because it's just like the whole like that could have also been like, again, the pieces are there for this to be an interesting story. Like if there was any and I'm gonna preface this by saying that I know that this wasn't the intention. I know that this wasn't what was intended at all. Like this is not a missed opportunity in terms of they didn't do the thing that they wanted to do. This is a thing that's like, this is something it could have been like if they had the vision of it for that. So I'm not saying that this is what they meant to be, but anyway, that generational story about like, well, it's in the freaking premise of the movie, a generational story about families in the special place they inhabit. Like if they wanted to tell a story about like life in America through the ages, tell a story about life in America through the ages, have it be pertinent to what's going on. Have like you said, like have like the Native Americans, the indigenous people, like come back, or like have it be a thing where maybe, I don't know, this might be a little too far-fetched, maybe not far-fetched, but like have a scene where they're like, yeah, we used to own this land and you are just living here after, taking it away. Like having like Native Americans experience that. And then if you're going to have like the African American experience in present day, have the African American experience in present day. Like don't just have one scene where, they're expressing what it's like to be Black in America with police brutality. Like tell the story, like don't just have that as like a single thing. Have that be like a statement that you're making in contrast to this like picturesque like white family that like post World War II and on. Like it just seems just very lazy and not really interested in telling anything of substance. And that just really bothered me because there's a lot to American history, and it just seems like this is just a packaged together, awards fodder, sort of like I said in the non-spoiler review, Member Berry's experience, and that seems very misguided and not good.
Yeah, and I was talking to our colleague Nick Rogers about this, and I think he was talking about how the movie could have leaned into its bleakness a little more. Mm-hmm. It actually gets very dark. Like Robin Wright's character has Alzheimer's, mm-hmm. And the movie is kind of bookended with these two scenes of her visiting the old house, and then at the end you see that she's struggling to remember it, and throughout the whole movie she has a pretty deep conflict with living there. She feels like she never has a life of her own. She never kind of has her own home. And in the end, she starts kind of barely remembering the house, and she says, "I love it here." And it's supposed to be this sweet moment, but it's actually depressing as fuck.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, great. Now that she has fucking dementia, she loves it. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it's like it's meant to pull at our heartstrings, but it just seems like very expected. And also just like the whole like lead up to like her getting dementia and everything just seems like just so lazy. And it's just like, oh, it's the craziest thing. I forgot why I was at the store. It's like, yeah, like that is how it happens. That is on paper that is the experience. But like, can you like maybe do another pass at the dialogue? So it's not just like, not just telling us, like, it's basically like them breaking the fourth wall and saying like, hey, she can't remember stuff. So, you know, there's going to be some stuff going on later that's going to be emotional for that. But, you know, right now she can't remember stuff. Like, it just seems just so half-assed and lazy. And it just, when you have like such a unique concept, like, you need to be conscious of the fact that anything that you put within that concept is going to stand out a little bit more than if it was a traditionally told story through like regular kind of narrative, like storytelling. But since you have this unique storyline or this unique style, anything that's not like completely like drenched in subtlety is going to stick out like a sore thumb, and it's going to kind of just make it seem like that kind of, you know, just like a theatrical production on, and like distractingly so. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, with the, you know, if you're going to be stationary with the camera, why not show us a little more than telling us? Like,
yes,
instead of her saying, oh, I forgot what I was doing at the Chinese restaurant, like, maybe have her walk into the living room and have no clue where she is.
Yes,
like dare to have a dramatic moment that's scary.
Right.
Like what if, you know, she could have a panic attack or something? She could like, there are so many other ways of showing that she has dementia.
Yeah.
And of course, Robert Zemeckis kind of shies away from those. And it's like, well, it's already depressing. Like, why not just lean into it? And I just thought, I felt bad for the audience, because I thought, like, this is for AARP members. Like, you're going to see what it's like to live with dementia, but, oh, don't worry, it's okay. Someday you'll, you know, fondly recall your old house. And it's like, that's not what it's going to be like. It's going to be scary and sad.
Exactly. And like, there's also a little bit of that with Paul Bettany's character, like, being bedridden throughout it. Like, there's so many different ways that it could have been kind of explored and told in an interesting way, but it just seems very very half-assed, basically. And I think that you mentioned it in your review, but also it just seems very tricky. Like, okay, if it, again, to bring up the AARP aspect of it as well, if that's the demographic that you're going for, like, why make the storyline be like, oh, she's unhappy because she could not live her life the way that she wanted to live her life, so it took them getting divorced for her to be happy? And like, that's fine, like, as a storyline, that's okay. But this is what you said in your review. You said, while we get a peek at Richard's inner spark through his paintings, Zemeckis and Roth, like the old-fashioned male storytellers they are, define Margaret by what she doesn't do. Like Richard's mother, Margaret finds herself sacrificing her dreams for the sake of marriage and children. Been there, seen that. And like, absolutely, like, what is the point of that? It just seems really just lazy, really lazy, first of all. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like, why not flip the gender norms there and, like, you know, maybe she's the painter and, you know, he's the guy who didn't get to do what he wanted to do. Like,
right.
Or, I don't know, like, if you're going to spend time in a living room with them for 2 hours, like, why not take advantage of that and really explore them as characters? Like, they just don't feel, they're very, like, thinly drawn. Like, they just don't feel very developed.
Yeah.
So it's like, why even bother just kind of taking away all the, like, why bother just showing them in a living room if they're not going to be complex characters?
Right. And like, the movie, I don't really remember. I think there are some like private moments that they have there, but utilize that space to really dive into, like, they could have utilized that space to really dive into the different, like, emotional beats of the characters. Like, have them have private moments where they're questioning their life and their life in the house and everything. There's not really much of that. It's more just like, oh, you know, she had a stroke here, and like, oh, the girl's a teenager now, so she's rebellious. It's like very just, it's just very, again, lazy and annoying. Yeah. But I will say something I really kind of appreciated about the story, and I think it could have been done a lot better, obviously, but something I do appreciate that they kind of touched on is the father-son relationship of Paul Bettany and Tom Hanks. In particular, the way that Tom Hanks sort of, like, as he grows up in the house, like it's demonstrated that Paul Bettany is an alcoholic. He drinks a lot, and he has an alcohol problem. And some of that like includes like anger and having like regrets about his life and all of this. But like, then, like, as Tom Hanks, when he becomes an adult in the movie, like, he has a drinking problem with wine, and like, it's referenced there, and that's like a little subtlety that I really kind of appreciate about it, but it doesn't go anywhere meaningful with it and go into any depth of it aside from Paul Bettany kind of like kind of just turning a corner and embracing sobriety and being kind of okay in the end. But like, I kind of just, it goes back to what I wish this movie was, like, actually telling a complex story of generational, like a generational story of complex families, like, existing in the same space. It's just, what a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, it feels so, like, safe. Like,
yes,
it's like it has, you know, some dramatic weight, but it's the kind of movie you can leave and not be depressed by.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's a good, like, Thanksgiving family trip to the movies.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say it's a good one.
Right.
But like, it's fitting. It's like, oh, well, like, here's a little bit of harsh reality, but not too much to bum you out.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, parts of it honestly made me feel like, has Robert Zemeckis interacted with normal people before?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like it just, like, everything felt kind of like odd, and like it took place in this heightened, like you mentioned, like it felt like a sitcom about life in the 50s.
Yes.
Like, just like not real or relatable.
Oh, absolutely. And the whole, like, like, it feels safe. It feels very just, like, even when there are moments where, like, they're talking about, they're commenting on, like, what's going on in the world at that time. It's like, yeah, we get clips of, like, Chips on TV, and we get clips of, like, American Bandstand with the Beatles and everything. But then, like, when they try to say anything of meaning, it's like, it's basically, it boils down to, and this could be verbatim the dialogue, like, it boils down to, like, multiple people at multiple times in multiple scenes of this movie saying, like, oh, that economy, you know, that economy's bad. Like, the vaguest sort of, like, just, like, safe statements. It's like, okay, just, like, give some kind of context, give some kind of like texture to it, so that it's not just this hokey, like, gee golly sort of dialogue.
Yeah, and like, this may be going a little bit too far, but I think the simplistic nature of dialogue, like, you know, oh, the economy's bad, it's kind of empowering that conservative mindset that's based on, like,
ignorance. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, based on, like, very vague complaints that are just kind of baseless. Like, I mean, that's exactly how those people talk. Is, like,
yeah.
they say, "Oh, the economy's bad," and you ask them for a specific example, and they suddenly forget where they are. So
Jesus.
yeah.
Yeah, one of my quick anecdotes, and I swear that's all I'll say, is I keep thinking like, oh, it's gonna suck tomorrow, because right now, like, to reiterate, we're recording it on an election night. It's gonna suck tomorrow because I just know, since the election's over, Biden is gonna he's gonna turn that switch in the White House that increases the gas prices. So, because that's the level of comprehensive thought that we get in political discourse about fucking gas prices. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of summed it up perfectly when you said, like, this movie doesn't have an innocent character to justify that kind of simplicity.
Yeah.
It's like Robert Zemeckis should obviously know better and realize that problems are more complex than they're presented as being in this movie. And I mean, frankly, like, shame on Eric Roth too. Like, I mean, he's a legit screenwriter, and this is just really lame.
Yeah. And like you said, bringing up Vietnam and not doing anything with it, like, there's a little bit of that with Paul Bettany being like, well, I fought in war so you wouldn't have to, and like, now you're doing this, and then nothing comes of that. Like, that's nothing. Like, it has no bearing on anything in the movie except for that one scene, and that's so frustrating because it's such a big thing. It's a big event in American history and world history, and it's just a freaking, like, a backdrop in this movie that's about generations and a house. I don't know. It's frustrating. But again, we got a clip of Chips. That's fine.
Well, yeah, that scene where the Tom Hanks's younger brother reveals that he is going to Vietnam. It's like he is shown in one other scene after that, and he has his uniform on. And it's like, oh, he's fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, everything went fine.
Yep.
And that's disappointing. It's what a bummer, man.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we promised we would talk about it. The hummingbird.
Oh yeah.
Like, it god awful CGI. Like, all of the animal work in this was terrible. Like, it looked horrendous. And I think I referenced on, like, Letterboxd or somewhere that, like, I laughed out loud in the theater when the hummingbird came up at the end of the movie, because it made me realize, like, oh, this is Robert Zemeckis's, like, he's doing the feather thing from Forrest Gump, but it's a fucking CGI hummingbird. Like, it looks terrible. It's dumb. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, it seems so out of place and so awkward. Yeah.
Well, at least the feather was, like, kind of symbolic of something.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was representing the way that Forrest just kind of went where the wind blew him.
Yeah.
And
I had to kind of snicker at that.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. But like this, it's just kind of, I mean, I don't know. Do you think it has any kind of symbolic meaning? Like, it felt random to me. I actually just Googled it because I wanted to make sure that it was a hummingbird, because I'm weird about that. But Screen Rant has the thing. I'm just reading, like, the first sentence. It's the hummingbird signifies the continuation of life, implicitly setting up a central theme of the movie where life will continue on even as certain blah blah blah. Which I can understand that, but my opinion is like, oh, it's a hummingbird. It's representative of what Robert Zemeckis did anytime anyone gave him notes on how to make this movie better. He would just hum, so he would, like, not listen to them. Amazing.
So,
sick burn.
So that's my take on it.
That's funny.
So dumb.
And, like, honestly, it's kind of offensive that, like, that silly bit of CGI comes after this very dark moment of a woman deep in dementia.
Yes.
And it just, here's this sweet little bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was lame. And again, missed opportunities all around. This could have been a very interesting movie, but Zemeckis and company just had no interest in making it an interesting movie. So I don't know. So that means it'll sweep in awards. I don't know. The Academy will love it.
Have you looked up like the Rotten Tomatoes score or this movie's doing?
I have not. I'm curious if it's certified hot. But no, I have not looked it up. Have you?
No, you know what? I'm going to do it really quickly right now.
I actually have it pulled up here.
You said the title of the movie.
No, yeah. I have it pulled up Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is now the popcorn meter. 58%. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, well, okay. So that's the popcorn meter. Yeah. It looks like the critic rating is 36%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe not an Oscar contender.
No. So that's just making way for the Madam Web sweep that we all know from February. So anything else on here, or should we kind of wind down and wrap up the review?
No, I'm good. Dump it.
Yes, same here. Okay, so here is in theaters. I would recommend not seeing it. I gave it 2 stars. Sam, you gave it 1.5 star. Just not very good. and I feel a little bit like maybe I shouldn't have rated it 2 stars. Maybe it was a 1.5 star movie, but I'll probably keep it at 2 stars. But once again, Sam, where can people find you online? Your work, your written work, and your Letterboxd stuff.
You can find my reviews at midwestfilmjournal.com, and you can find me on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man.
Nice. And thank you for joining me for this featured review. You are going to go away for the secondary review, but I think we're going to round out with some potpourri after the secondary review. So I'll go ahead and play my secondary review of We Live in Time. And when I come back, or after that, we'll have Sam back for potpourri. And before we get to our secondary review, of course, I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel as well, where I am dabbling with more and more videos and live streams of podcasts. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use the promo code OBSESS. When you sign up for a new account, you'll get up to 2 months free, depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that are in the show notes of this episode. And now back to the show.
Tell me I view obsessively.
There is something that your daddy and I...
There's something that Mummy and me want to...
We want to talk to you about. It's a bit serious, though.
What's happened to my underwear?
Oh, I literally have no idea.
So sorry, but do we know each other?
Yeah, no, I ran you over. Sorry.
All right, and for this week's secondary review, I'm going to share my thoughts on We Live in Time, which is currently in theaters. It was released in theaters on October 28th, 2024, and the premise, according to IMDb, is an up-and-coming chef and a recent divorcee find their lives forever changed when a chance encounter brings them together in a decade-spanning, deeply moving romance. Director for this movie was John Crowley, and writer was Nick Payne. And this movie stars Andrew Garfield as Tobias and Florence Pugh as Almut. So I'm going to do a non-spoiler review, but this movie is a decade-spanning romantic drama. So I do just want to point out, if I haven't already in this episode, that I'm just tickled that I got these two reviews together. So here in We Live in Time, they're kind of similar in a certain sense. One of them is actually good though. We Live in Time, I ended up rating it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. A thing to say up top about it is that this movie is not a time travel movie. And I say that because, idiot that I am, when this movie was announced like last year, and when I would see like clips or pictures from the set when I would see it on like Variety or whatever, I was under the impression that this was a time travel romantic drama. Like, I thought that the movie was going to go through different timelines in a way where it's like they're bouncing through time somehow. Had no idea that it was just a straightforward romantic drama, but it's told in a nonlinear structure. So, like, from the moment this movie was announced, like a year and a half ago, up to literally probably 5 minutes into the movie, when I was in the theater in my seat, I realized, oh, this isn't a time travel drama. So I thought that was kind of funny. But despite that weird kind of just complete a complete just misinterpretation of thing, that the complete lack of media literacy on my part, I really enjoyed this movie. It is a very touching romantic drama. It basically, throughout the movie, it bounces around in time. It's actually a little bit better than the way that it does it in here, but it bounces through time where we see this couple through various stages of their relationship and their life together. So, like, it opens with them having been married, her pregnant. It bounces around to like before they met and when they met, and like all of these different things. You guys know what a nonlinear structure is, so I don't know why I'm explaining it, but there is a little bit of, I don't want to say contention with the format of the movie. It's more like to a far lesser degree than a movie like Strange Darling, where I came out of that movie wondering, like, there's no reason for that movie to be told in a nonlinear structure. Strange Darling is it's a completely different movie. It's a thriller, mystery movie that's told nonlinear and to no effect. For no other reason than to just describe to kind of just basically disguise a pretty straightforward narrative. Here, it's still like, and obviously this has nothing to do with Strange Darling. I'm just using that as an example. But this movie, We Live in Time, the way it's told in a nonlinear structure, it's not needed. Honestly, it's not needed to be told nonlinear. It could have been a linear storyline, and the point would have been made. The point would have come across very well. But I do think that there is a certain level of enhancing the story that the nonlinear structure gives it. So there are moments where throughout the movie we see Almut basically wrestling with how she's going to like whether or not she wants kids, basically, and choices that she needs to make throughout her life that will decide whether or not she's able to have kids, or if she wants kids. And like that's a big point of contention between these two people in this relationship. But the opening scene, the second scene of the movie, is her pregnant and having contractions. And it's an interesting way to just kind of fold the story along in a way that tells us it's not done in a way that's like, oh, well, we know that this is going to happen. We know that we know what is going to happen. So we don't need to really wrestle with the drama of what they're going through. But instead, it just kind of showcases the way that their relationship changes and forms throughout time. And I thought it was done pretty effectively and pretty earnestly as well. A big thing about this movie is that she has a cancer diagnosis. And one of the big points of contention in the relationship that's demonstrated early on in the movie is whether or not she is going to seek treatment for her cancer, or if she, like, one of the big things is this is a recurrence of cancer that she's had. So she tells Tobias that she, like, would you rather have 6 to 9 months of pure hell of going through treatment, or 12 months, maybe 12 months of just living our life together and living, you know, a full life in 12 months. And so that's kind of a jumping off point for the movie in terms of just showing like what that means for her and what that means for him. And there are a couple of moments in the movie where I felt like it was a little bit confusing, to be honest, as to where we were in the timeline. Like there was, since that is a recurrence of cancer, there is references to her first round of treatment, her first diagnosis. And there were moments in the movie where I was like, I don't know where we are. I don't know when we are in the timeline at this point. That's a minor quibble on my part. That's a minor issue that I had watching it. But for the most part, this movie just covers that, like the full scale of their relationship is covered incredibly thoroughly throughout this movie, and it is enhanced by that nonlinear structure. And those like big milestone moments, they land incredibly well thanks to that nonlinear format. And what I mean by that is when you see her, like the birth of their child is like, it is magnified it's magnified fivefold by the stuff that's come before and after it in the timeline. So knowing where they are as parents, knowing who they are as a couple, who they were before they were a couple, and then seeing that timeline just kind of going back to when their child is born, creates this just powerfully poignant, beautiful, dramatic moment that I bought hook, line, and sinker. It was really effective on me. There has been a lot of jokey kind of reactions to the poster of this movie. So the poster has them on a merry-go-round like carousel thing, and in the frame is one of the horses in the merry-go-round. It has like the derpiest look on its face, and it's hilarious. It's what everyone is kind of, when that poster was released, it's what people kind of latched onto. And I will say it's like it. I don't think I even really saw it in the movie, but as much fun as it was to just kind of, and as much fun as it is to kind of make fun of that imagery and make fun of that, the goofy look of the horse on the poster, the scene where they are in the movie, on that carousel, on that merry-go-round, it's part of a montage that is incredibly powerful. It harkens back to one of my favorite movies of all time. Take This Waltz, which is a relationship drama about attraction and potential infidelity, and just it is one of the most just amazing movies I've seen, written and directed by Sarah Polley and starring oh my god, Michelle Williams, and God, I feel bad that I can't even remember the guy's name, but it's Seth Rogen is in it too, but it's incredible. But there is this montage in Take This Waltz where Michelle Williams and not Sarah Silverman, Michelle Williams and Luke Kirby. Luke Kirby is the guy. Okay. Where Michelle Williams and Luke Kirby are in like a similar situation, as like a similar like area as this like carnival thing that's in We Live in Time. And it's this montage scored to Video Killed the Radio Star. And it's incredibly effective. It is like the apex of that movie's kind of just distillation of attraction and taboo attraction, or attraction that you shouldn't have, and in the kind of pull toward another person when you are, with someone else. It's incredibly effective. And this sequence, this montage in We Live in Time it conjures a similar sort of feeling in me, that it is this culmination. It's completely different. It has nothing to do with infidelity. It has nothing to do with attraction or anything. It's just, it's like two people living in the moment, not a cell phone in sight. It's that kind of thing. It's just like this wonderful distillation of their their connection as a couple and where they are in the movie, where they are in that moment. And what I love about it is that this movie kind of demonstrates that in a very in a very wonderful way, in terms of holding back like the drama, holding back like the actual conflict that they have is really interesting in this movie, because there is, of course, this like late in the game kind of dramatic moment where, you know, the kind of the gloves come off a little bit and they have an argument, and that's based entirely on Almet's desire to be in this competition for cooking and kind of concealing that from Tobias. It's a whole thing. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but when that scene comes to a head, it's such an interesting kind of just dramatic moment. It's basically the dramatic climax of the movie, and it really just kind of is that culmination of the drama that's been underneath the movie the entire time. So like, we've been back and forth in time and everything, but the movie hadn't really touched on the Almet's character as a character, her goals, her ambition, her competitive nature. It's touched on it a little bit, but it hasn't been at the forefront. And when it comes to the forefront in that big climactic dramatic moment, it plays really well, and it makes the remainder of the movie all the more kind of beautiful, and kind of just brings it home in a really satisfactory way. It's a romantic drama, so it's like, it's gonna be heart-wrenching in some places. It's gonna be kind of beautifully done. The chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh is amazing. They're both great actors, and they play their parts really, really well. I did want to say there is such a just genuine and natural charm to Andrew Garfield, like, just in general. Like, the dude is amazing. He's an amazing actor. I frequently think about his big like outburst scene in The Social Network at the end when he destroys the laptop and he's like screaming at Jesse Eisenberg. Like, that is one of my favorite scenes of anything in the last 10, 20 years or however long it's been. So like, I'm a big fan of Andrew Garfield, but between like this and like the interviews that he's done and the his appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home, like, I think he has just this charm and this just genuine like just charming nature to him that, like, I wrote in my Letterboxd review, the first thing I wrote was, I want to start a rumor that Andrew Garfield is secretly a puppy, because he has this incredible charm, like, throughout the movie. Like, when they have that outburst, when they have that big dramatic moment that kind of brings home the dramatic tension that's been simmering underneath the movie, it's not out of spite. It's not out of a contentious thing that's been brewing. It's out of him wanting more time with his wife, and him just like what him and his child, what he feels they deserve. And it's just a really well done dramatic moment. And like I said, it really comes home in a really good way with the finale of the movie. It's really good. Circling back to the nonlinear format, like, it does, it's better than I've seen in other movies, but again, it does kind of seem like a little bit just slightly like confusing in a couple of spots, but for the most part, it's really effective, and it's a really beautiful story of these two people, their relationship. And that's one of the things that I really like about this type of movie, is that this isn't, like I said, and I'm circling back, I'm kind of going in circles about this, but this movie isn't about the drama of two people who want different things in a relationship. It's not the drama of two people who are facing something like a very big hardship in their relationship and have to make difficult choices because of it. Those are elements of the story. But what this movie is it's what the title implies. Like, they live in time, like they have time on this earth together as a couple. And the relationship drama that's presented with that is because of that time. It's because of the time that they have together, whether it's long or short. It's kind of like, it's kind of up in the air, basically. And the drama that comes about from it is how they utilize that time, how they use that time. And instead of being a contentious point with their relationship as to like, well, I want this out of my life, and well, you want this out of my life, and we both want this out of our relationship. Instead, it's just about time. It's about like wanting more time, wanting to utilize that time. And I think that because of that, because of those themes, the movie's nonlinear structure kind of really works pretty well in the grand scheme of things. So I don't want to spoil anything else that I already have, but I will say that We Live in Time is in theaters. It opened on October 28th, and I rated it 4 stars on Letterboxd. I don't think it'll make my top 10. It might squeak by a little bit. I don't think I have it on my short list, though. Or maybe I do. Let's take a look here. But let me scroll down to find my short list here. So yeah, it's not on the short list. It might pop up. I don't know. But yeah, it's been a really good year. So yeah, maybe it might squeak in, but I doubt it will. It might be an honorable mention. But like I said, We Live in Time is in theaters now, and go check it out and let me know what you thought.
They tell me I view obsessively.
Okay, and Sam is back for Potpourri. We're going to wind down the episode with just kind of rapid fire talking about movies we've watched recently, kind of in a back and forth there. It's the Potpourri segment is whatever we want, as long as it smells good. And I'll get us kicked off with something that I mentioned in last week's episode, that I have like a backlog of movies that were supposed to be main and secondary reviews on the podcast, but my bereavement time kicked in and I couldn't have an episode for like a month. Or I didn't have an episode for a month. So I'm kind of playing catch up with movies that would have been featured reviews and secondary reviews. And I want to get it kicked off with talking quickly about The Substance, which is now available on digital. It was released in theaters September 20th. I rated it 5 stars. The premise, according to IMDb, is a fading celebrity decides to use a black market drug, cell replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. Sam, you recently watched this movie as well, and what did you think of The Substance in non-spoiler, just kind of casual conversation for Potpourri?
I thought it was great. It's definitely out there. It's, bizarre. It's gross. It reminded me quite a bit of early David Cronenberg stuff, especially The Fly. And this might sound like a hyperbole, but I think it's a contender to be like an all-timer body horror movie.
Yes. So, yeah, 100. Like, I gave this movie 5 stars. And, like, I'm not good with body horror. I'm very much not someone who's good with body horror. And in the theater, I was squirming so much. And like, it got to the point where I really thought I might throw up. Like, I legitimately thought I might throw up, which is something that I don't experience in movies. It was just like it got so under the skin, not even just from a visual standpoint, but just the sound design. Like the close-ups of Dennis Quaid just eating shrimp is disgusting, and like it just has this overall visceral feel. And like there's an element of this movie that isn't even the worst part of the body horror or anything, but it involves a rotting finger.
Oh yeah.
And while I was trying to go to sleep 2-3 nights ago, this is months after I've seen this movie, I had that thought in my head. Just the finger. And it made me so unnerved and unsettled, months removed from seeing it. Like, I've seen movies that have a little bit, like when I saw Night Bitch at Heartland, there's a little bit of body horror there because a part of it is her turning into a dog. And like in my seat, I was sitting there thinking, I survived the substance. I'll be okay in this movie. Like that's the level. Awesome. Yeah. That's the level to which this movie just had a profound effect on me. And the messaging and everything and the themes and everything is just amazing. So yeah.
Yeah. Very, relevant to today's kind of image obsessed culture. Mm-hmm. I think maybe Demi Moore's best performance.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen her in a role quite like this one. It takes some pretty wild twists and turns. Mm-hmm. Margaret Qualley is great as well. Yeah. Dennis Quaid is just like an all-time sleaze. Yeah, it's one of the best movies of the year for me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's first up for Potpourri. Sam, do you have anything that you've watched recently that you want to talk about in a brief Potpourri section?
Yeah. So sticking with horror, I caught up with Oddity.
Oh, nice.
And I liked it a lot. I thought it had kind of a nice Hitchcock flavor. Again, I was talking with Nick and he mentioned how it kind of feels like a Hammer horror movie.
Yeah.
And I can see that, especially with its setting. It takes place in this house that kind of feels like a castle, like an old timey castle. It has some jump scares that really got to me.
Nice.
And actually, Jen, my lady, screamed at one point, and I was already scared. And that awesome. Just like it. Oh man, I jumped out of bed.
That's so great.
It was an amazing scare. There's a piece of art in the movie. It's basically a wooden man, and that's one of the scariest things I've seen recently. And I think it's just kind of a great image. I hope that there's all sorts of wooden man artwork and merchandise in the years to come. I would love to see that at like horror conventions.
That would be awesome.
So Oddity was a lot of fun.
Nice. I saw it earlier this year. I actually reviewed it with our friend Joe Shearer in episode 436 of the Obsessive Viewer podcast.
Who'd you review it with?
Joe.
Who's Joe? I'm kidding. I'm
yes,
kidding.
Joe Shearer.
I love Joe. We have kind of a comic rivalry going.
So. Yes. Yes, as listeners will know from episode 445, where we reviewed Woman of the Hour. Oddity was really good. It's on Shudder now, right?
Yes.
Nice. So I am going to round out Potpourri, unless you have another one. I can round us out with my quick thoughts on Afraid, which is...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I just realized
I'd forgotten about that one.
Yeah, like I know that we had talked about having you on for it since it's a PG-13 horror movie. But I think it didn't pan out, which is fine. The movie's terrible. It was released in theaters August 30th, 2024. Directed and written by Chris Weitz, starring John Cho, Catherine Waterston, Keith Carradine, and others. David Dashmalian is also in it. But the premise, according to IMDb, is the Curtis family is selected to test a new home device, a digital assistant called Aya. Aya learns the family's behaviors and begins to anticipate their needs, and she can make sure nothing and no one gets in her family's way. This movie was not good. I rated it 2 stars, gave it the old Zemeckis here special. And it's It's okay. So it's not really that terrible. Like in my Letterboxd review, I mentioned for a PG-13 Blumhouse horror movie, Afraid really isn't that terrible. But there is such kind of similar to here. There is a much better and more nuanced AI themed horror movie to be made out of this concept. And the movie does nothing with it. Instead of kind of seizing on like social commentary about AI, it's weirdly loaded with bits of current like AI bashing. Like there's some weird like dialogue where it's like, oh, you know, Siri sucks. Alexa sucks. And it's like
weird.
It's so weird, so lame. And like it's in the same vein, it also makes a point throughout the entire movie to reinforce the idea that, oh, Aya is nothing like these things. So it's like it's telling the audience like, oh, don't be afraid of your phones because this technology isn't like the technology you use every day. But it's also like the movie is telling Apple and Amazon like, hey, we're not making fun of you like that. Like we're not like, don't sue us. This is not like Aya is not you guys. It's fine. So it's weird, but it feels incredibly cut down. Like, I don't know if it was originally supposed to be an R-rated movie. I don't know how much of it was edited down, to fit whatever story we got at the end. But like, the movie feels just very, very, very heavily edited to the point where it feels like it's not anywhere near the movie that it probably was on paper, and that's very, very bad. In the end, and there's a whole plot line about like another family that's tormented by it, and like how that can lead to like that leads to the end. Like it's like there are moments in the trailer that are clearly cut out of the movie that again reinforces that whole idea of like, you know, the finished product is a wildly different movie from what was originally the original vision of it was. But like, there's a whole other family that has like this experience, like in the prologue, and like the way that ties itself back into the story feels like it was meant to be a much, much bigger, like more monumental thing. And it's done so half-assedly and so poorly that it just felt like, okay, yeah, I remember these from the beginning of the movie. Cool. Like it's lame. It's really, really lame.
You said it kind of like makes a point to say that it's not commenting on current technology.
Yeah, specifically Apple and Amazon. Like it seems more
That's
like
lame.
Yeah, it seems so much like they're trying to avoid any kind of like it feels like they're trying to avoid like litigation or like whatever by not like making sure that it's like they say like it's not Alexa, it's not Siri. So yeah, it's
I mean, like to me, it should be kind of leaning into that technology and saying like this stuff is getting scary,
right? Yeah, it could have been a much more effective and interesting horror movie if it had leaned into that.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, I love PG-13 Blumhouse horror.
Mhm.
I think they're all great.
Yes.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are decent.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that's weird.
It is. And the final thing about that is like there's a big indicator of how this could have been a much better movie and a much more richer kind of social commentary movie is like there are scenes where like the little kid of the family is like Aya is showing him. I don't even remember if this is in the finished movie or if it's in the trailer and not in the finished movie, but basically Aya is showing him like violent videos, like videos of war and stuff. And like there is a version of this movie that is about how AI can radicalize people or like technology can radicalize people into being violent or to having like really bad takes or voting for, you know, like an orange man. But like they don't do anything with it. I don't even remember if that's in the movie. It could have just been in the trailer, so it's annoying. So yeah.
Well, that's odd. I'm glad I missed that one then.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you did too, honestly. Although I'm sure the discussion would have been a lot of fun. I'm glad you were spared afraid.
Well, I'll be sure to watch the next PG-13 Blumhouse movie.
Nice. And you will be back to talk about it with me if you would like to. So yeah.
Of course.
Nice. Okay, well, that should do it for this episode of The Obsessive Viewer. Once again, Sam, thank you so much for joining me and for talking with me about here and our Potpourri section. Once again, where can people find you online? I know we just said that earlier in the episode, but just to wind us down, where can people find you online?
Sure. You can find my reviews at midwestfilmjournal.com. You can find me on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a blast as always.
Of course. And that's it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. As always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast hosted by Tiny and myself, and Anthology, the Twilight Zone and Classic Sci-Fi podcast hosted by me. Next time on the show, we should have a bonus episode reviewing It Ends With Us with guest Kim C. from the Year of Underrated Stephen King. So check that out. And then next week in the main episode, it is most likely going to be a featured review of Anora and a secondary review of Heretic. Although there's a possibility we could be reviewing A Real Pain. We'll see. But until next time, thank you once again, Sam, for joining me. And thank you guys for listening. And I'm trying to run out the clock on this outro music, but here's the cue. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer.
I'm not sure either, but yeah, I'm struggling to think of like what the major Oscar movies will be. I mean, I have my list of stuff I'm looking forward to, but I can't imagine it falling into the sort of Oscar award season categories. Like Nosferatu is kind of the big one for me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking forward to Baby Girl with
me too.
Nicole Kidman. That looks great, but that doesn't necessarily seem like an obvious sort of award season movie.
Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.